They say the wind never stops on Merrow's Point. It doesn't howl like in stories, it whispers. All night long, it brushes past the windows, brushes against your cheek when you're trying to sleep, like it's tasting you. The lighthouse keeper's job isn't hard in theory. Keep the light burning. Log the ships. Make sure the lens doesn't freeze over or cloud up with sea spray. The isolation is what gets you. That and the Wick Room. I didn't even know the room had a name until the second week. The government-issued guidebook, more of a relic from the 60s, called it Storage Chamber C. But Paul, the old keeper training me, called it the Wick Room. He said it like it was a joke. But I noticed he never went near it after sundown. It's just spare supplies in there, he said on my third night, when I asked why he kept avoiding it. But the door's nailed shut, I pointed out. He looked at me for a long moment before shrugging and saying, "Sometimes things fall out when the wind's strong." I didn't ask again. But that night, I counted the nails. 13, all shiny and recent. Nothing in this place was recent. Not the rotting walls, not the mildew-streaked stone steps, not even the journal entries in the logbook. But those nails were new. On my 6th night alone, Paul had left that morning. I woke up to the sound of something rolling. Slow. Heavy. Like a barrel scraping across a wooden floor. The sound was coming from the floor below. From the Wick Room. I sat up in my cot, heart doing that sudden freefall thing you get when you wake up too fast. I knew I had locked the lighthouse door. The only key to the Wick Room was on my ring. The nails were still there. They had to be. I forced myself to check. The hallway was colder than it should have been. I checked the door first, of course, front door still locked, deadbolt secure. Then I went down the spiral stairs with a flashlight clenched between my teeth, every step creaking like it was warning something below. When I turned the corner to the Wick Room landing, I froze. Every single nail was gone. They hadn't fallen out, there weren't even holes anymore. Just clean, unbroken wood, like the door had never been sealed. Like I'd imagined it. And then I saw the note. Folded neatly on the floor beneath the handle, as if someone had slid it under from inside. My hands were shaking as I opened it. One line, written in old fountain pen ink. Do not light the wick again. There's no wick anymore, not in the modern sense. The lighthouse uses halogen bulbs and backup batteries. The old wick system was phased out decades ago. But there's a smell in that room, old burned oil. And something else. Something that made the hairs rise on my arms the moment I stepped closer. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Instead, I renailed the door with whatever I could find. And then I sat on the floor outside it, holding the note, until dawn began to push against the sky and the first beam of the lens sliced out across the waves. That's when I noticed the journal had a page torn out. The most recent entry. I hadn't done it. The last entry was from Paul, dated 4 days before he left. It just said, "The Wick Room is waking up. If you hear the rolling, do not open it. If you open it, do not go inside. If you go inside." And it ended there. I didn't sleep after that. I didn't eat much either. The sound came again the next night, rolling, scraping, stopping right at the door. Sometimes it paused like it was listening. Then it would retreat, slow and dragging, until silence swallowed it again. The third night, it didn't retreat. It stayed. I knew because I could hear it breathing. Not loudly. Just softly enough to make me question whether I was hearing it at all. A low hiss, like air escaping from lungs that didn't know how to breathe anymore. That's the night I started leaving the lighthouse light off. I know how that sounds. But I had read more of Paul's entries. They weren't in the logbook. They were stuffed inside a hollowed-out maintenance manual under his bed. Some of them dated back almost 10 years. They talked about the Wick Room like it was alive. It remembers being fed, one entry said. It hates the silence, but it fears the light more. Another was just a single sentence. The oil isn't gone, it just learned to wait. After that, I kept the lighthouse dark. The Coast Guard sent a message the next day, low signal strength, something about a shipping route complaint. I didn't respond. I didn't want them here. Whatever this was, I wasn't going to be responsible for spreading it. On the fourth night, I woke to silence. No scraping. No breathing. Just an open door. Not the wick room. My bedroom. I never sleep with the door open. And I know I closed it. But now it was ajar, gently swinging inward, letting in a smell I can only describe as hot wax and seawater gone foul. Then came the footsteps. Not heavy. Barefoot. Slow. One step every 5 seconds. Coming from the stairs. Coming up. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Just watched as the shadow came closer. It reached my door and paused. That's when I saw the wick. It was in its hand. Long, oil-stained, smoldering at one end. And then it turned and began walking down the hallway. Toward the light room. Toward the lens. That broke the paralysis. I ran after it, whatever it was. But by the time I reached the top of the stairs, the door to the lamp room was closing. I threw myself against it. Locked. The key ring was still in my room. From inside I heard the faint scratch of a match being struck. And then the light turned on. It wasn't halogen. It was orange. Faint at first, then stronger. It glowed like something alive, something angry. The kind of flame that doesn't illuminate, it exposes. The next morning, a ship washed up against the rocks. No distress signal, no call. Everyone aboard was missing. The logs were burned to ash. And on the wheelhouse wall, carved deep into the wood, was one sentence. He lit the wick again. That was 3 months ago. The Coast Guard brought a replacement keeper last week. I warned her not to open the wick room. She laughed. I told her not to light the lamp. She told me it was protocol. Last night, I passed by the old door. Nails again. Different this time. Bigger. Thicker. 16 of them. I didn't put them in. And this morning, I found another note under my bed. The same handwriting. Same old ink. Thank you. I haven't seen the new keeper since yesterday. I'm leaving this journal behind, hidden like Paul's was. If you find it, remember, the light isn't just to warn ships away. It's to keep something in. The logbook was how it started. I wasn't even the keeper, just a replacement tech sent to upgrade the electrical systems on Leeuwenhoek Light. The actual keeper, a guy named Mercer, had taken sudden leave. No explanation. Just gone. I was supposed to be there 3 days. The lighthouse was perched on a sharp spit of rock miles off the coast. Getting there meant a 2-hour boat ride through cold spray and fog that refused to lift, even at noon. By the time the boat pulled away, the sense of abandonment had already sunk in. Inside, the place was cleaner than I expected. Too clean. Like someone had scrubbed it with the desperation of someone trying to erase something. On the main desk lay the logbook. I wasn't supposed to touch it. Not my jurisdiction. But the pages were open, fluttering faintly in the wind coming through a cracked pane. The last entry was dated 3 weeks prior. It read, "Third night in a row. 2:17 a.m. exactly. He walks the outer ring. He doesn't look up. Not yet." The page after that was torn out. I flipped backward. The earlier entries started off normal. Weather, visibility, supply counts. Then they started to shift. Notes about hearing footsteps from the outer catwalk. Mentions of someone testing the bolts. Questions scribbled in the margins. Did I tighten those rails yesterday? Why do they always stop walking at 2:17? I closed the book and told myself Mercer had lost it. Cabin fever. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear. Because of the sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Wet. Circling the lighthouse on the outer walkway. I tried to tell myself it was seabirds landing, or metal contracting in the cold. But the pattern was too deliberate. A step every few seconds. Always in a circle. Never hurrying. Then it stopped. Exactly at 2:17 a.m. I checked. The steps had moved with such steadiness, I thought maybe someone really was out there. Some idiot thrill-seeker who'd swum in. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the door to the catwalk. Nothing. No footprints. No puddles. Just the wind and the sea, and that same low fog that never seemed to lift. The next night, I heard it again. This time, I didn't wait. I ran out the second it started. Again, no one. But the smell had changed. Salt and oil. Like wet rope dragged through fuel. And then I saw it. On the railing, something had been scratched into the metal. Not words. A tally. Dozens of lines, most of them old and rusted, but 4 or 5 looked fresh. Scraped clean. Like someone was keeping count. Back inside, I checked the log again. Mercer's entries had changed tone in the final pages. I saw his face in the reflection. It wasn't mine. I didn't make that mark. I swear it wasn't there yesterday. He's not trying to get in. He's trying to remember how. By then, I was counting the nights. Something about the number 217 haunted me, not just the timing of the steps, but how final it felt when they stopped. Like a ritual completed. On the third night, I waited on the catwalk. I stood in the dark, flashlight off, not breathing. The footsteps approached slowly, deliberate as ever. They rounded the bend and came closer. I couldn't see him. But I could hear him, wet feet slapping wood, dragging behind them something heavy. Then the steps paused, not 6 feet from me, and I swear, just for a second, I heard breathing. And then it said, "You're early." I didn't move. Couldn't. The voice wasn't loud. It was just there, like condensation on a window. Quiet, natural, like it belonged to the place more than I did. And then, just as suddenly as it spoke, the footsteps resumed. One slow circle, then silence at 2:17 a.m. as always. But I didn't go back inside right away. I stood there on the catwalk, staring into the fog, thinking about that one word. You're. Not he. Not you're early. Like to a stranger. But me. Like it knew who I was. Like it had been waiting. I barely slept after that. Each night, I locked every door and window, turned on every lamp, made coffee just to stay awake until dawn. But by the 5th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what happened to Mercer. The Coast Guard gave me nothing. Said he'd resigned without comment. No forwarding address, no emergency contact. Just vanished. I searched the lighthouse again. Not for tools or food, but for evidence. I started with the basement. That's when I found the hatch. It was hidden beneath an old wooden crate stamped 1954. When I moved it, the wood beneath was newer. Less warped. There were drag marks. Like someone had opened it recently. Inside, a steep iron ladder descending into darkness. No signs, no warnings. No reason for it to exist in a building this old. I climbed down 5 rungs and stopped when I smelled it. That same smell, salt, oil, rope. Then I heard something move. Not footsteps this time, breathing. Wet, labored. Like something trying to inhale through lungs filled with seaweed. I climbed out and sealed the hatch. I nailed it shut with whatever I had. A crowbar. Boards from the maintenance room. I wrapped a belt around the latch and cinched it tight. My hands were shaking so hard I barely noticed the splinters. The 6th night, the steps didn't start at 2 o'clock. They started at 1:57. Faster now. Closer. The cadence was off, unsteady, like it was limping. Dragging something behind it. When they stopped, the whole lighthouse shuddered. I ran downstairs. The hatch was open. The nails were on the floor in a neat pile, like someone had unscrewed them carefully. And the belt? Gone. The boards? Still intact, but leaning against the wall. I backed away, nearly slipped on the wet footprints that led from the hatch toward the stairs. No puddles. Just prints. Bare feet. Heavy. The left one smeared, like something injured. I locked myself in the lamp room. I stayed there until dawn. I didn't move, didn't breathe. But I watched. From the top of the lens, I could see the catwalk. And at 2:17 a.m., the steps stopped. And a figure leaned into the light. Only for a second. Pale. Hair slicked flat to its head. No eyes. Just a smooth plane where the face should be, like clay wiped clean. And from the place where its mouth should be, a whisper. Your turn. I left the lighthouse the next morning. The boat came late. I didn't look back. The Coast Guard called 3 days later. Said they couldn't find the new keeper. That I was the last one on record. They wanted me back. Just for a week. They said. Until we find someone permanent. I didn't answer. But that night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., I heard footsteps on my roof. I live in a 5th-floor apartment. No catwalk. No wind. But I heard the steps. And they circled. Once. Then stopped. You're not supposed to sleep inside the lighthouse. That was the first thing they told me when I arrived. There's a station house half a mile inland. The manager said. Lighthouse isn't meant for habitation. Emergency use only. He handed me a keyring. Every key had a number. 1 through 6. Then one unlabeled brass key, worn smooth. No need to worry about that one. He added too casually. It's just for room 0. Locked permanently. Some old storage space. I never asked why it had a key if it was permanently locked. The lighthouse at Blackridge Shoal is tall, taller than most. 8 stories of corroded spiral stairs, flaking paint, and a lens room that moans when the wind hits it just right. The sort of place you can hear breathing in the walls if you sit too still. My first night was uneventful. I kept to the manual. Lens rotation logged, beacon checked, radio silent. Fog rolled in around 10 p.m., clinging low to the water like it was hiding something. Around midnight I heard movement. It wasn't on the stairs. It was inside the wall. I thought it was rats, maybe a bird. Scratching. Pacing. Something finding its way through old timbers. I didn't sleep, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Second night, I stayed later than usual. Something felt wrong. I had this crawling sensation at the back of my skull, like I was being watched, but not from above. From beneath. I went floor by floor, checking every door, until I found it. Room 0. It was on the 3rd level. A short hallway that shouldn't exist, behind a panel that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. I only found it because I dropped my flashlight, and it rolled sideways, bumping against what I thought was just another section of wall. The key fit perfectly. When I turned it, I felt resistance, not mechanical. Something else. Like the air itself didn't want me to open it. Inside was darkness, dense and heavy. No windows. Just walls, floor, and what looked like the remnants of a bed frame. Metal broken. Shackles bolted to the floor. A chair in the corner. And something written in charcoal on the far wall. Do not follow the shadow. I stepped in, barely past the doorway. The air was hot. Wet. Like breath. The moment my foot hit the floor, the door slammed shut behind me. It didn't lock. But when I opened it again, the hallway was gone. I was staring at the central shaft of the lighthouse, except I was now 2 floors higher than I should have been. I had stepped into room 0 on floor 3. Now I was on floor 5. No stairs. Just silence. And something moving just out of view, across the lens above. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the ground level. I checked my watch. It was 3:09 a.m. I had been in room 0 for less than 3 minutes. But my logbook, still open on the desk, said I'd signed off at 3:07. I know I hadn't written that. My pen was dry. I hadn't touched it. The signature wasn't mine. It was Mercer's. The same Mercer from Leavenhoek Light. The one who disappeared. I didn't go back to room 0. Not for days. But every night after that, I'd find things slightly wrong. My radio would be on, faint static hissing out even when I knew I'd shut it off. The lens would be smudged from the inside, like someone had pressed their face against it. Once, I found the keys moved, every key in a different order on the ring, except the one to room 0. That one never left the center. I stopped using the station house. It felt safer inside the lighthouse, even though I knew that was a lie. At least inside, I could hear it coming. The scratching started again. But this time, it didn't stay inside the walls. It was in the stairwell. Scraping metal. Something dragging. Something remembering. On the 7th night, I heard a knock. Not on the front door. On the wall. 3rd floor. 3 sharp knocks. Then silence. I stayed up, clutching a hammer I found in the supply closet, until first light. In the morning, I checked the 3rd floor. Room 0's door was open. Inside, everything was different. The bed frame was whole now. The shackles gone. In their place was a single red blanket folded neatly on the bed. The writing was gone from the wall. But etched into the floor, barely visible, was something new. "He follows what you ignore." I backed out slowly. Shut the door. Didn't lock it, just closed it, gently, like trying not to wake something. Then I went to the logbooks. Not the current ones, older ones stored in the station house under lock and key. I broke the lock. Inside were entries dating back decades. Some names I recognized. Most I didn't. All mentioned the same thing. A room that appears only to those who hear the wall. A room that moves. A room with time that doesn't behave. And always the warnings about the shadow. I didn't understand it, until I saw the photo. Tucked into the back of a 1992 journal, yellowed and creased. It was a man standing in front of the lighthouse. Mercer. Same face. Same eyes. Only the caption didn't say Mercer. It said, Ray Halvorsen? 1971. Same man. 20 years older. In a photo taken 2 decades before he was even born. I checked the station records. Halvorsen disappeared in 72. Presumed drowned. Mercer, my Mercer, wasn't listed anywhere else. He didn't exist before this lighthouse. That night, I stayed in the lantern room. I left all the lights on. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I heard the steps. Not on the stairs. Inside the walls again, but faster this time. Urgent. They stopped behind me. In the reflection of the lens, I saw the door to room 0. Even though I was 8 floors up. It was standing open, and inside. A figure. Tall. Hands wrong. Like too many joints. And it wasn't standing. It was hanging, just inches off the ground, its feet twitching gently like it had forgotten how to walk. And behind it, in the deeper dark, something else. A shape with no edge. No features. Just the absence of everything. A shadow that moved when everything else stood still. I blinked and the lens cracked. Hairline, from top to bottom. And in the mirror of the broken glass, room 0 vanished again. I left at dawn. I didn't report anything. Didn't write a final entry. I drove straight inland and never looked back. But last week, a new logbook arrived in the mail. No return address. I opened it. Inside, one entry. Just a date. 1 week from now. 3:07 a.m., welcome back. The strangest thing about Tower 19 wasn't the location. It wasn't the remoteness, or the weather, or even the fact that its logs only went back 18 months, even though the structure had clearly stood for over 70 years. It was that it didn't appear on any map. I only found it because I was assigned there during a reroute of all coastal signal stations. Emergency reassignment, they said. Short term, just 2 weeks. It was the first week of November, and the sea was already angry. There was no boat. No road. A small, black chopper dropped me off on the helipad with barely a word. The pilot didn't even kill the engine. Just handed me a flashlight and a key ring. When I turned to thank him, the door had already shut. Tower 19 loomed above me. Not a lighthouse in the traditional sense, more of a signal relay post. Tall, skeletal, steel-framed with a single beacon on top and a small living quarters below. No proper records. Just a console with 6 blinking indicators, each labeled for a coastal signal point. 5 were green. 1 was dead black. I tried to log in. The console denied access with a single error message. No profile found. I tried again. Same message. The manual was gone. The drawers were empty. Only one thing was left, a radio headset still warm. Like someone had just set it down. And the logbook. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. It read, Signal 6 failed again. 2:53 a.m. steady. Keeps trying to connect. Keeps mimicking voices. Last night it sounded like me. The signal logs weren't digital. Just printed reels of paper, long like seismograph readouts, curled into bins beneath the console. Each one was filled with jittering, rising lines, noise, distortion. Except for Signal 6. That one had a message. Not Morse. Not static. Just a line of transcribed text, printed in neat block characters. Hello? I am still in the water. I ran the tape again. I watched the printer. Nothing. Until exactly 2:53 a.m. The line jerked to life. One by one, letters punched themselves into the paper. Cold. Dark. Help me. I didn't know what to do. There was no network access. No landline. The only connection was the headset. So I put it on. And I listened. At first, just wind. The low groan of the towers shifting. Then a whisper, faint. Repeating. Can you see me? I asked who it was. No answer. Just that same voice, again, this time behind my own ears. Can you see me? I pulled the headset off. Threw it across the room. The signal continued to print. I see you. You look cold too. I powered off the console. Disconnected it entirely. But the printer kept running. At 3:17 a.m., it stopped. Just like that. The last line on the reel. Don't forget the water. I left the room and went to the metal staircase, climbing to the upper level. The beacon was dark. Even though the main power was on. I tried resetting it. Nothing. The wiring looked fine. But the bulb. The bulb wasn't there. Instead, inside the beacon housing, something was left. A folded piece of black plastic. A poncho. Army style. It was soaking wet. And across the back in white paint. Signal 6. I didn't touch the poncho. I backed down the stairs, slow and careful, like noise would wake something. The tower moaned with wind, metal creaking, joints straining. I told myself it was weather. But then the console powered back on. I hadn't reconnected it. And all 6 signal lights were now green. I stared for a long time. Signal 6 was active, flickering, like the connection wasn't stable, but unmistakably on. I pulled the headset from the floor and slipped it on again, afraid of what I wouldn't hear. The voice returned. Clearer this time. Same tone, same cadence. Can you hear me now? I didn't answer. But I didn't remove the headset either. Then it said, I am beneath. Not beneath you. Just beneath. I stepped to the window. Nothing below. Just the metal legs of the tower vanishing into ocean chop. The tide was high, violent. If someone was out there, they'd be long dead. I turned back to the printer. It was running again. Only now, instead of words, it printed images. Outlines. Sketches in crude dot matrix. A spiral staircase. A dark hatch. A hand reaching up. A face, blurred eyeless, skin melted by distortion. And then, a mirror. A perfect rendering of the room I was in. Myself, standing by the console. But in the picture, I wasn't alone. There was something behind me. Tall. Gaunt. Pressed against the far wall. Its fingers bent wrong. Like they'd never stopped drowning. The moment I saw it, the tower shuddered again, stronger this time. I turned, hard hammering, but the room was empty. Still, I backed out and locked the console room door. I made it as far as the lower deck before I realized the lights had gone out. Total blackout. No beacon. No hallway strip. Just a weak orange flicker from my emergency flashlight. And something wet on the floor. Footprints. Bare. Leading away from the console room. But not toward the stairs. They stopped at the wall. At a metal panel I hadn't noticed before. When I touched it, it was warm. Inside was a maintenance ladder leading straight down. Way deeper than the tower was supposed to go. The air changed halfway. Cold. Wet. It felt like descending into a throat. At the bottom, I found a room. Small. Circular. With another console. Older. Rusted. And a single signal light. Numbered 0. The light was red. Pulsing. And the headset, already on the chair. I should have left. I should have burned the tower and never come back. But I sat. I listened. Static. Then, "You've come far." Then silence. Then my own voice. "Don't forget the water." And then, "Let me up." I climbed out of that place like the ladder would collapse beneath me. But when I reached the surface deck, it wasn't dark anymore. The beacon was on. But not mine. Far in the distance, across the black ocean, another light was flashing. Steady. Deliberate. Morse. 3 letters. SOS. Signal 6. Only, there is no station past Tower 19. Nothing but miles of water. The printout came one last time. A name. Repeated over and over, hundreds of times. My name. Then a date. 1 week from now. And a time. 2:53 a.m. The same time the voice always starts. That was 3 days ago. Tonight I woke up with wet footprints leading from my bed to the tower window. I'm not staying for the week. Let the water keep what it took. There's a rule in the keeper's manual for Station Ellery. Do not engage the override. If the light fails to ignite, wait until sunrise and report the malfunction. Do not attempt to relight. No one could tell me why. I asked the regional supervisor. Asked the guy who trained me. Same answer every time. That rule's older than the system itself. It's just tradition now. But rules that specific don't come from nowhere. Ellery is isolated. More than most. 60 nautical miles from the nearest port. It sits on a circular rock formation barely wide enough for the tower and a helicopter pad. The waves hit it sideways, even on calm days. You can hear the ocean inside the walls, like it's trying to whisper something up through the stone. My first week passed without incident. I logged temperatures, performed checks, confirmed the beacon's beam. I even started to like the quiet. On the 7th night, the light didn't come on. No sound. No flicker. The beacon just failed. I checked the main console. Everything looked fine. No blown fuses. Backup power was engaged. But the override switch glowed orange. I stared at it. In any other lighthouse, override meant safety. Meant rebooting the system to guarantee visibility. But here, it was a red line. One you don't cross. One etched into the manual with strange emphasis. So I didn't press it. Instead, I climbed to the lens room with a flashlight to inspect the housing. That's when I saw it. Not the problem. The figure. On the far edge of the rock down below. Just past the tower's shadow. I almost missed it. It stood motionless, facing the sea. No light touched it, but I could see its outline perfectly, like the fog avoided that spot. I leaned closer to the glass. Blinked. It was gone. I scanned with the flashlight. Nothing. Just surf, black and endless. I descended and spent the rest of the night documenting everything. Writing calmed me. Gave me structure. Made me feel like I was still in control. In the morning, I called it in. The voice on the other end was calm, dismissive. First week, right? You'll see things. Trick of the weather. Sleep weird. Don't override, that's the only thing. I asked again why. This time, the voice hesitated. Then, the light's not for ships. Click. That night, the beacon stayed dead again. And the figure was back. Closer now. I spotted it from the kitchen window. It was standing on the lowest step of the outer stairwell, the part that loops once around the tower before rising to the entrance. Still not moving. No wind touched its coat. No sea spray. I shut every window. Every latch. I locked the front door and placed a heavy chair against it. It wasn't rational. But I'd seen its face this time. Not in detail. Just wrong. The way you see something in a dream and know, instinctively, it doesn't belong. I returned to the console. The override switch still glowed. Brighter now. I didn't press it. I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. I went to bed around 4 a.m. The light still out. The storm creeping in. And that's when I heard it. The sound of something wet brushing against the outer wall. Dragging. Sliding upward. Stopping just below my window. I turned on the flashlight and edged closer. Nothing. But the window was wet. From the inside. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I checked the window again. It had dried, but left a faint residue, like salt water, but thicker. Oily. I wiped it away with a towel, which I later found curled into a ball beneath the console. I hadn't put it there. That day, the weather cleared. The sun came out for the first time in a week, and for a moment, I convinced myself it had all been nerves, fog tricks, a pattern of paranoia. Then I checked the lighthouse logs. Each keeper was required to submit physical journals weekly. Most were kept in storage. I spent the afternoon combing through them. The entries varied in tone and detail, but one thing kept repeating, like a hidden pulse beneath everything else. The light fails. The figure appears. Never engaged the override. It went back decades. Each time the light failed, the figure returned. Always closer. Always more vivid. Some keepers claimed to have spoken to it. One wrote that he dreamed of it first, and then woke to find it watching from the shore. Another described hearing his name whispered into the stairwell. And one, just one, had flipped the switch. That journal ended mid-sentence. No further logs. No resignation. No follow-up. The official record lists him as lost at sea. That night, the light failed again. The override switch was now pulsing, not just glowing. It throbbed like a living thing, matching the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I stayed in the lens room as long as I could. Watching. The figure didn't appear right away. But around 2:30 a.m., I saw something rise from the Black Sea. Not climbing. Not swimming. Just ascending. Like a balloon filled with blood. Slow. Smooth. It stood at the base of the tower for a long time, face tilted upward. I couldn't make out details. Just that its face was featureless. Not blank, just worn smooth. Like stone left out in the tide. And then it began to climb. Not the stairs. The wall. It moved like it remembered how a body should move, but had forgotten where its bones were. Limbs at odd angles. Shoulders turning the wrong way. By the time it reached the second story, I had already locked myself in the console room. The override was glowing white-hot. I could hear it now. Not footsteps. Scraping. Like flesh slapping against stone. Like something trying to wear the shape of a man again. I held my breath as it passed outside the door. It didn't try to come in. Just paused. Then slowly continued up toward the lens. I stared at the override. I don't remember pressing it. I only remember the light. It didn't blink. Didn't warm up. It just came on. All at once. Brighter than any normal bulb. Too bright. It hummed with something old and terrible. Like power that had been building in the wires for decades. And then the screaming started. It wasn't human. Not quite. But it knew my name. When I woke, it was morning. The light was still on. The override switch was dead, melted into the console. And outside, near the base of the tower, was a patch of scorched rock. Nothing else. The figure didn't return. But now, every night at the same time, 2:30 a.m., the light flickers. Once. A single pulse. then steady again. I've asked to be transferred. They denied it. Said I had a duty. They don't care about the light. They just don't want it looking somewhere else. So I'll keep the light on. Because I know now what happens when it goes dark. And what waits for it.